Ready. All right, he's ready. We're going to call this hearing to order. First of all, I'd say the attendance, Supervisors Cassiola, Fisher, Schifani, Barney, and Aguizio are in attendance. In addition, our Assistant Township Manager, Jack King, our Solicitor, Gretchen Moore, and I think that's it on our staff. I think we have to do a swearing in if you plan on giving actual testimony tonight. Would you please swear them in?
Anybody who can offer comments, please speak.
Still don't like that comments. All right. This public hearing is to consider, or it was to consider, a proposal that the board came up with last month. I know you've seen the original map we have. I have to tell you, though, that we are considering an alternative map. It's not a map, alternative setbacks. And so I would ask you, when it's your turn to talk, please, we don't need repetitive comments on the same thing. It's just not helpful, and it just drags the hearing out. This public hearing was advertised on August 21st and August 28th. So first of all, I'm going to go with comments from the board, and I think I'm going to start. The subject of this hearing has been a very divisive and contentious issue with our township, between township residents and citizens, and even our board members. And I think it's the most serious issue this township has ever faced, and this board has to deal with it. And I think it's appropriate that we all should have a short civics lesson. And I'm not talking about this lesson on civility. I'm talking about a civics lesson like we had or should have had in high school. And every civics class starts with the statement that we live in a democracy. And it's not a true democracy, it's a representative democracy where you don't get to vote on anything and vote on issues that impact you. You can vote for people like us, and we do the voting and vote on issues and pass laws. And you have to know that a democracy only functions because its citizens consent to be governed. Now, there are a lot of different levels of government between the federal government, state, county, and local government. In Pennsylvania, townships and boroughs are the entity that handle local government. Now, we may offer police protections, fire service, we may offer road maintenance and things like that, but our most primary function is zoning. And I remember years ago on my first day as a supervisor, a wise and wonderful former tax collector, Janet DeFelice, told me one thing. She says, zoning is to protect you from me. And my rights to use my property to the fullest or can have to be contained on my property. My rights don't extend past my property line. My use can't impact over the line and spill onto your property and impact you negatively. For example, if we all live in the same neighborhood, and I'm having a party in my backyard, I have a live band and large speakers and noisy people. Zoning says that if you're impacted by it, you can call the township. And the police are going to come out and tell me, they just say, hey, you're disturbing your neighbors, knock it off. Or I have weeds and grass growing in my yard that I don't cut. And my weeds and grass, they're not making any noise. They're not keeping your kids awake, but they actually can impact negatively on your property values. So again, zoning, you call the township's going to come out and tell me, hey, cut your weeds or grass, or we're going to cut it for you, and we're going to bill you for it. Or one other example, that junk car I have sitting in my front yard up on blocks that I plan on restoring someday when I have the time and money, it actually can affect property values negatively on everybody on my street. So again, zoning says that you can come and call the township. The township's going to come out and tell me, hey, get that car inside a closed garage or get it off the property, or we're going to get it off for you and we're going to bill you for it. This board has the right to tell you how you can use your property. If we can say that you can put a gas station on your property, we can tell you that you can only put single-family homes on your property, and we can tell somebody you can put a bank or a bake shop on your property. And we can also tell you how far that bank has to be from the streets, and we can tell you how far apart your apartments have to be. We also impact businesses, and when I mean businesses, I'm specifically talking about outside businesses that operate outside. We can tell them when and where they can operate. We can also tell them, look, you can only operate from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. You can't operate evenings, Sundays, or holidays. And all the businesses in our community, they honor that because that's the law, that's zoning, and they've consented to be governed. Well, now the drilling industry comes along, and we all know it's a serious, impactful, loud, intensive operation. But the state actually gives them special considerations, and they expect us to do likewise on certain conditions. So the proposed ordinance that we have actually grants those special conditions. We allow them to work extra hours. Our ordinance says they can work from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. They can work evenings, weekends, and holidays. But the industry says that, again, we know how impactful it is. They say that, well, we'll try to contain ourselves. We'll put sound walls up and pads under our equipment, but we can't put sound walls on all 4 of our sides. We can put up on 3 sides, but it's so impactful that we can't put up a 4th sound wall because it wouldn't be safe for the guys. We got to open up one side and blow it out on somebody else. The other thing is they'll say we can't stop drilling because it could cause an explosion. It's dangerous for the workers. They say we can't stop fracking because it could be a well bore collapse or something like that. That's dangerous for the workers. So I would say that if you can't stay contained like zoning requires within your own property, maybe you shouldn't start, or maybe you should move to a wide open 1,000-acre properties out there where your impact won't be felt even at your own property lines. Don't start that. I'm going to tell you this also. Residents say that that we'll be sued, that it's going to cost the township a lot of money, our ordinance will get thrown out. But I can't picture a judge in this land or an appellate court in this land that would say, okay, we know you're a serious, impactful business and you can't contain yourself safely, so go ahead and do it. I really feel that our board has to enforce and support this ordinance. But wait, I would tell you this also, that if a drilling company comes and makes an application for a new well pad on our township, if it meets every condition of this new proposed ordinance, I would vote for it, and I would encourage my board members to do the same. So right now, if there's any other board members that want to make some comments before we go to the citizens?
Anybody else before me? Okay. Bear with me, I apologize. I've been struggling with bronchitis for the past month, so hopefully I can get through this. I want to reference a few things quickly before we start, which is that there are some cases that have been before the courts that have helped us decide what we can and can't do. One of them specifically is a case called Gorseline. It allows municipalities to determine what's right for us. Not every municipality is different. You drive 2 miles down the road into South Fayette, and it's very different than Cecil. You drive into Peters, it's very different than Cecil. You drive to Cranberry, it's very different. So what other municipalities allow, we don't have to. That does not mean what we're doing is exclusionary. Exclusionary would mean that it's not allowed anywhere in the township. We already know that's not true. And they're gonna say, there are people in the industry and people, outside of this township that say it's a ban. It can't be a ban when you already have 5 well pads. So you just have to keep that in mind. We know what we're doing. In the same way you wouldn't want the entire township covered in chicken farms, you wouldn't want the entire township covered in housing plans, you wouldn't want the entire township covered in commercial, you don't want the entire township covered with industrial uses. And that is the purpose of what we've gone through over the past 9 months. There have been residents that have come to the board, not just these meetings, but also our regular board meetings, screaming and yelling at us for using our solicitor and spending taxpayer money. That's what it's for. We want to do it right. We want to make sure that we get this right so that if there is a challenge, that we are comfortable that it will hold up in court. We don't want to spend all this time and all this effort, all your time and all your effort, and not win. So that's why we've done that. It is our obligation, when we stand before we take this seat on this board, it is our obligation to swear that we will protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Cecil Township. I don't take that lightly. I would hope my other board members don't take that lightly. And so when we're listening to all of you say over and over and over again, protect us, protect us, protect us, we have to listen to you. And it didn't just come out of nowhere. I think Supervisor Cassiola is going to talk about what the setback is. But there's a reason for it. There was a grand jury investigation. They came up with a setback. It wasn't arbitrary. It wasn't random. It was specific, and it was for a reason. Everything that we've done up until now has been specific and for a reason. We're also going to introduce something which you'll see later that allows landowners and people in the industry an option. We don't want to make this decision for you. This is what, our fourth hearing? We've sat through 4 hearings, 15 hours, not to mention the countless hours that we've spent on our own researching this stuff. We can't pick this for you. So what we're going to introduce in a little bit will allow a setback that listens to you and provides the protections that you've asked for, but also allows landowners who want to take that risk themselves the ability to do that. I quickly want to say, this is a map which I'll grab. We grab out of my mailbox. It's like on a flash drive. I threw it in my mailbox and forgot I put it in there. This is a map which I'll put up. Our current 5 existing pads cover 60% of the township with oil and gas development. That is far, far, far from exclusionary. Exclusionary test was a cell phone tower case that only allowed towers on 1% of the township. We haven't done that. There's 60% of the township. Like Supervisor Cassiola said, there's no guarantee that I can do anything I want with my property no matter what. If you want that, then don't live in Pennsylvania, I guess, because there's no zoning somewhere else. But you can't do, like, the idea that you have a right or anybody has a right to do whatever they want with their property no matter what is false. I think that's it, but I think just the important thing is that we have an obligation to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people sitting in this room, of the little people in the schools in our township, of the older people who've come to live here, who've lived here their whole lives, and we take that seriously. And we've experienced it too. One more thing. This decision didn't come because we heard rumors, because we talked to other municipalities or we heard stories. We have lived it. We've lived it with the Augustine pad. We've lived it with the Bernard Schultz pad. We're in the process of living it with Connor Samuel. We know what we're getting into, and we know what we're saying yes and no to.
Bill, do you want to make any comments yet? Frank or Darlene, do you want to make any comments before we go to citizens talk? Okay, and again, I would remind you then that, again, repetition isn't helpful. If you've already had a chance to talk, please give somebody else a chance to talk.
Can I quickly, are you going to pull that up? Yeah. So I think the important thing, one more quick thing, and then I'll get off my high horse for the day, is to remember that this issue is related to surface drilling, not drilling in general. So this entire side of the township can be covered by the 5 existing pads. That's not to say that surface operations can't and won't come outside of the township in Mount Pleasant, in North Strabane, in Peters, in South Fayette, and come under the township. So us saying we're putting a 2,500-foot setback on surface drilling does not mean they will not drill underneath your property. If you live, say, here, I can't reach, I'm super short, sorry. I'm the shortest in my family. But say here, there is the potential that there will be a surface operation outside of the municipality's borders that accesses your gas. We are not saying no drilling. We're just saying we are limiting surface operations because of the impact to health, safety, and welfare of the residents. So, sorry.
Again, I wish you to come up for a cue. If you want to, well, I'm sorry, first of all, we have a couple experts that want to make some comments, and somebody's going to introduce them. Jack?
It's fine. Batteries. Sorry about that. Mr. Chairman, we do have someone that has asked to introduce two of our expert witnesses to speak this evening. Attorney Josh Brown, if you'd step up.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Brown. I've spoken here before. I'm an attorney with the law firm Lund Metcalf. I represent Georgetown Estates Homeowners Association. Our community was previously directly affected by one of these proposed well sites, in between two of them and in the shadow of another one. So I am pleased to hear that the board is reconsidering the present proposal. And just as a housekeeping matter, and I think the board knows this, there can't be a vote tonight so long as there is revisions being considered and proposed. However, the purpose for tonight for me, and I'll cut to it, is to introduce our two experts, which are Dr. Ned Ketyer and Christina DiGiulio, and also to place on record their reports that they've provided us along with some supporting documents. Dr. Ned Ketyer is a pediatrician with over 30 years experience. Dr. Ketyer is an active member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Environmental Health and Climate Change, and he literally wrote the textbook on pediatric environmental health, the 5th edition. He serves as the president of Physicians for Social Responsibility in Pennsylvania, and I have a copy. I'll give you a copy of his CV and his report he'll be providing here tonight. I have those copies. Pursuant to Dr. Ketyer's report, he also relied upon the recent two University of Pittsburgh studies on asthma and childhood cancer, as well as the 2020 grand jury report, which I'll also place into the record. Christina DiGiulio is a certified thermographer. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. FLIROGI certification with a bachelor's of science degree from Lock Haven University. She'll be testifying to the thermal images on the Augustine well, and as that relates to ongoing consideration of these ordinances. So thank you for your time and ongoing considerations for these important matters.
Sit and talk, or do you want to be okay.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. I've been a pediatrician in this area with the office in Bridgeville and McMurray for more than 26 years. Thank you. So it's nice to look around the room and see so many familiar faces. It was truly a joy to take care of your children and your grandchildren while I was in practice. But now I do this. Practically, all the health studies that have been done about fracking so far show that living and working near fracking increases the risk of developing health problems. Unsurprisingly, studies tell us conclusively that the closer you live and work to fracking operations, to the heavy diesel truck traffic, to the well pads, the pipelines, the compressor stations, the gas processing facilities, to all the landfills that take and process the radioactive and toxic fracking waste. The closer you are, the higher the risk of developing health problems. What the studies don't tell us, though, is what exactly is causing these health problems. However, the list of suspects is long. Could be the benzene that's released in fracking. It could be the black smoke exhaust from all the diesel trucks that are involved in fracking. It could be all the heavy metals that come from deep in the earth. It's plausible that it's radioactivity, especially radium and radon gas in the rock and the water that flows back up into the fracked gas well and out into the surface. And that is really one concern that we have about the apparent increase of rare childhood cancers in this region. Maybe it's the stress. It's very stressful for people to live around all this loud and smelly activity. So we don't know for certain what single factor is to blame for all the health harms that we're witnessing when it comes to fracking. But there are things that we do know with a great deal of certainty about fracking, because fracking is inherently dirty and dangerous. And that's something that industry rules and government regulations haven't been able to fix. It's undeniable that fracking scars the landscape and degrades the environment. We also know that fracking pollutes the air and the water and the soil that all of us share. We know it endangers wildlife and aquatic creatures and farm animals and even family pets. We know for certain, in fact, it's undeniable that fracking accelerates climate change and threatens the health of the future of our children and our grandchildren. And finally, after 20 years of fracking in Pennsylvania, we know for certain that fracking makes people sick. Fracking has been linked to multiple negative health outcomes, including pregnancy complications and poor birth outcomes, severe asthma, heart disease, cancer, premature death in seniors, and mental illness. Many of the studies were conducted right here in Pennsylvania. Researchers from Yale University a couple of years ago discovered that children have 2 to 3 times the risk of developing leukemia if they grow up within 2 kilometers, which is about 1.25 miles from a fracked gas well. Last year, researchers at the University of Pittsburgh and the Pennsylvania Department of Health released the results of 3 studies on the effects of fracking. I served on Pitt's external advisory board for these studies, which was a sounding board for the researchers while they gathered all the data. The results confirmed research done previously in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. The closer you live to fracking operations, the higher the risk of serious health impacts. And nobody should be surprised about that. Asthma attacks were more likely and more severe in residents living up to 10 miles from 1 or more fracked gas wells in southwestern Pennsylvania. Now, practically everybody who lives in Washington County lives within 10 miles of a fracked gas well. In fact, most people in Washington County live much, much closer than 10 miles. So the risk is real for every Washington County resident who is asthmatic. And the highest risk occurs not during the drilling and the fracking phase, but rather during the production phase, which the industry tells us will last for decades. So this threat to the health of asthmatics in Washington County, to current asthmatics and to ones that will be diagnosed in the future, that risk is going to persist for a long, long time. The Pitt study also showed that people living within 1 mile of 1 or more fracked gas well had 5 to 7 times the risk of developing lymphoma, which is a rare and serious form of cancer. Elevated risk was seen up to 5 miles from fracked gas wells. And pregnancies were impacted also, leading to poor birth outcomes, including babies born smaller than they should be. This tells me as a pediatrician that there's something about fracking that is interfering with the normal growth and development of an infant inside the womb. There are many chemicals used in fracking that have been shown to cause endocrine disruption during pregnancy. Like the asthma study, the elevated risk was seen up to 10 miles away. Tonight, a more protective setback of 2,500 feet from fracked gas wells to residences is being proposed. You may recall that the first recommendation by the statewide grand jury in 2020 was to push back no drill zones or setbacks to at least 2,500 feet. The grand jury felt that 2,500 feet should be the minimum distance allowed between fracked gas wells and homes. And they said so, quote, "Even that distance is only a short stroll within sight and sound of residences. We do not believe such a modest buffer zone is too much to ask when it comes to people's health and homes. Now, the grand jury also recommended an even bigger setback of 5,000 feet to protect sensitive sites like hospitals and schools. Quote, "We just want to give it some separation from the places we eat and sleep, treat the sick, and educate our children." The grand jury's recommendations are indeed modest. While 500 feet, the current allowed setback, is obviously much too close, research suggests that 2,500 feet from residences and 5,000 feet from schools and hospitals may also be too close. For example, there are studies showing adverse health symptoms consistent with exposure to toxic fracking chemicals up to 1 kilometer, which is 6/10 of a mile, or about 3,300 feet. At 1 mile away from fracked gas well pads, or 5,280 feet, Yale researchers discovered that elevated leukemia risk in young children that I mentioned before. At 2 miles, negative fetal health effects and high amounts of stress in residents were found. Research shows that poor birth outcomes, low birth weight, prematurity, and small for gestational age newborns up to 3 miles away. The Pitt researchers found increased risk of young people developing lymphoma as much as 5 miles away from a fracked gas well, although the risk was highest within 1 mile. Looking out 6 miles, researchers have observed more adverse birth outcomes, birth defects, neurologic visits for migraines, and moderate to severe depression in residents. Even up to 10 miles from fracked gas wells, researchers found newborn babies had a higher risk of being born with congenital heart disease. Pitt's birth outcome study showed low birth weight in newborns up to 10 miles away. As I mentioned, Pitt also showed that the risk to asthmatics for having a serious asthma attack was 4 to 5 times higher than those living within 10 miles of a fracked gas well compared to those living more than 10 miles away. Researchers have detected radioactive particles traveling greater than 10 miles from fracking sites. And of course, fracking accelerates climate change due to all the greenhouse gases that are emitted. And climate change affects everyone's health on this planet. Based on these studies, as well as my experience listening to people who have been negatively impacted by fracking, I believe that establishing a setback of at least 2,500 feet from residences and 5,000 feet from schools, hospitals, and other buildings where vulnerable people congregate is a small but necessary step in protecting the health of this community. I just have one very quick thing. It's likely the board is never going to know how many lives have been saved by this decision to expand the setbacks, how many doctor's visits and trips to the emergency room and hospitalizations were avoided, how many pregnant moms made it to term with healthy babies. You're not going to know how many cancer treatments and premature funerals never happened because of this decision. But I'm pretty sure that most people living in Cecil Township and the doctors and nurses who care for them are grateful for you and for your decision to protect their health and safety by expanding the setback as you proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Chairman, since Attorney Brown introduced Christina DiGiulio, out of order for what I have, would you want her to go? Okay.
Fix the microphone for her also, please.
All right. Thank you, Jack. All right, so now we have to do this part. Get the video. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys. My name is Christina Giulio. I am a certified thermographer in optical gas imaging. I'm an environmental chemist for. Yes, there. I knew she said it. I got this. A certified thermographer in optical gas imaging. As well, I am the environmental chemist for Physicians for Social Responsibility of Pennsylvania. I have history of working with the Department of Defense as an analytical chemist, and I've been involved in basic research for sensor development. 6-1 research is called, and that's for remote sensing. What I'm going to show you tonight is basically it's a video that I took out here both in April of 2024 and as well just last week, August 31st. And this video I'm going to play. I'm going to let it play. I'm going to talk through it, all right, because it's a silent video, and it's going to take a little bit of explanation because it might get confusing for you. I got that, I swear. All right. So essentially, optical gas imaging, this camera has a particular lens that can filter out. I'm going to make it really simple. This camera sees what your eyes cannot see, which is spectrally limited to hydrocarbons, volatile organic compounds, things that are probably coming out of the wells that we know. Methane's an example, okay? So this is the drone imagery that a wonderful fellow friend took. You'll see the credits at the end. This is the angle as to which I am videoing. So what you're going to see here, if I can get this guy working. There you go. You look right here. So this is literally showing you. So you're seeing all these temperature differences. That's the thermography aspect of it. The colors represent the heat. But what optical gas imaging has with their spectral filters is what you saw there was actually hydrocarbons released into the atmosphere. So I want you to know that, there it is. Again, right here. See, that is a plume that you can see forming. And this camera, this is called high sensitivity mode. I froze it here because that is basically how I validate that it's not thermal convection. And I know I'm using confusing language to people, but I have to go through this process in order to validate that I'm not misinforming you. It's not thermal. But you see how that all up there is coming from a source right here off this well pad. This is August 31st. And so what I want to talk about is that the fact that I've been out here is 5 months ago, and in April, I saw similar issues. That means the families in that area have been exposed to a similar release constantly for 5 months. And we have set up air sensors all around that. The families around the actual facility, the pad, right? We are trying to do our best to surround them. Those air sensors are not a solution. They're basically us trying to validate the experiences that these families are having, the health impacts and what they're smelling. It's chemical sensors. So I'm now up at the top of a neighborhood. It's I cannot remember the name of the neighborhood, but it's up above. The drone imagery showed it, and I'm going to sit here for a little while and have to take some time. So right here is the crane they're actually in the process of fracking where they're injecting everything. Right next to it, you saw there's a bright mark. That's a flare. So there's a flare next to it. That also is not fully combusting, but what I ended up seeing to the right is also more hydrocarbons, and I don't see a heat source. So it's popping out here. It validates what I saw on the other side of the fence. And it's hard to capture because it takes some study. This is a distance, right? So here it is again. That's why I do this high sensitivity mode, which is showing and validating. Now you got that little plume coming up. So this is happening for months in this neighborhood. I actually decided to put in the older video because we're talking about a setback here, right? And the setback is about like how a lot of questions are have 2,500 feet. Is this plume going to move 2,500 feet? Well, if we know that the health impacts from a mile, from the studies that Dr. Tart said, we got health impacts from a mile, obviously these plumes, they move. It's in the air we all share, I like to say, because there's no invisible wall that stops my, after my imaging stops. It's continuing on. Where does that go? That's all about the meteorological data, like the barometric pressure. I could not tell you where it's going, but I know it's going into our atmosphere and accumulating. So where the entire community is absolutely being impacted at all times. And I did have a written testimony. I'm not following it. That is going to be in a record because I really want to focus on what we saw here. And this is what I do mostly, is go on, as boots on the ground. So now we're back in April. And here's that flare. And I'm like, I'm on the property of the landowner here. And this is what they see every day. And that flare was not fully combusting. Now I'm switching back to the neighborhood. And this is what I want to pay attention to. So it's very hard to see, but this is why, and I wish I was on a tripod, I apologize. It's just, I kind of have to rush sometimes. You're gonna look eventually when I slow down. There you go, right here. You'll see a movement. That is actually the pad's around here. You're seeing a movement across the pad. I'm seeing hydrocarbons sitting there above the pad. And it's puffing up, and it's not easy to capture this from a distance. I am using this camera in a very much so unconventional way, just because I understand it, but it takes a lot of patience. Sometimes I don't have the time, and it's hot, or the background temperatures are not right. But what I saw here was scary to me, because I'm way far away. This neighborhood, I'm watching it skirt across the neighborhood. So when we talk about movement of it, it absolutely moves. All right, and where does it go? I don't know. But what I can tell you, and I'm going to read this last part for you. Yeah, you can see that right there. You saw it puffing up. Where's my? There it is, right in there. Yes. And it's moving. And I've seen this. This is not the only well pad. I've seen this over all of Pennsylvania. I've imaged over 100 well pads at this point, and I'm seeing a lot of similarities. And what I want to say, the fugitive emissions that I observed in Cecil Township are now a part of the air we all share. While hydrocarbons from infrastructure can disperse, I will slow down, ma'am. I apologize. They all know. I'm going to actually take a step back, right? I actually would prefer to read. I'm not going to repeat.
There are a lot of things that happen out here that you really...
I do bring in the fun. All right, thank you, Jack. Can I go again? I'll slow down for you. Because I don't want to repeat, as you said. The pollutants of concern, we know they are both of combustion and non-combusted. I'm mainly looking for the non-combusted. That is not even included in ambient air for EPA. We are looking at it. It's called VOCs. One of the things, these pollutants can contribute to air quality concerns and may be regulated in ambient air, as I said, due to health or climate impacts. The closer you are to the well pads, the more concentrated the emissions will be, making exposure to a wide range of pollutants not just possible, but most likely probable. Public health protection is improved when facilities are located away from where people live and when the emissions are controlled. Now, however, from what I have observed, across the state of Pennsylvania, imaging over 100 ONG sites, the majority of them show fugitive emissions even with these controls in place. It is irresponsible and unethical to allow communities to be the test bed for this industry to improve its process. This should have been done during the research and development stages of the technology, and in my expert opinion, it is clear that the industry developed a novel technology without consideration of its cradle-to-grave measures or its waste handling, or the impact to public health. Therefore, this technology should never occupy places where people live and work. It's all about how they develop technology, and if we're doing this backwards, that means that the technology wasn't developed properly. And it's now under the burden. One of the things I feel for you as a municipality, this is an extra task you have to take to protect your community, in which you have that, as you said, ma'am, protecting the health and welfare. And I understand you have to work with a lot of moving components. I just want people to be well aware that we do not give room anymore to poorly planned projects like this, and we stand with you on protections.
whenever we call them up. Can I say something really quick? Kind of related to what she presented? So in my curiosity, I was reading Range Resources 10Qs and 10Ks, their financial disclosures that they have to put out, quarterly 10Q and annually 10K. And to point to what you said specifically, in their, one of their disclosures, it says, and this is directly from Range Resources, so it didn't come from anywhere else. But it said, we may be exposed to liability and costs for handling hydrocarbons, air emissions, and wastewater or other fluid discharges related to our operations and waste disposal practices. Spills or other unauthorized releases of hazardous or regulated substances by us, our contractors, or resulting from our operations could expose us to material losses, expenditures, and liabilities, civil and criminal liabilities under environmental laws and regulations, and we are currently and have in the past been involved in such investigations, remediations, and monitoring activities. I don't think they set out to harm people, but I think that based on your videos and based on what they're saying, there are people and residents being harmed, and we're not doing enough to stop it.
Mr. Chairman, I want to introduce you Dr. Keith Hamilton Wharton. He's a fellow with the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists.
My presentation will be short, but they're dealing with some numbers, so I think this will be helpful.
Or you need me to help you? Works for me? Thank you.
My name is Dr. Keith Wharton, and I've been board certified by the Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology in the past. I'm retired. I'm also a member of I've been board certified by the Anti-Aging Regenerative Medicine, and I'm retired from that, and I've done a fellowship in stem cell therapy. I spoke a couple months ago. I talked about the isotopes, radon, radium, 2 of those, and the petroleum that are in some of the flowback water. So today I'd like to speak about an article that was published, and it's titled Acute Myocardial Infarction Associated with Unconventional Natural Gas Development, a Natural Experiment. Marcellus Shale occurs in Pennsylvania and New York. This observational study was generated because we could compare the people in Pennsylvania to the ones in New York where there is a ban on fracking. These 2 states are located next to each other. The population and the demographics are very similar. The difference being that one state has fracking, the other does not, and that's why it's a natural experiment. This study looks at the number of wells, and it gets reviewed quarterly, along with the number of heart attacks and hospitalizations or deaths. Those also have been reviewed quarterly over the past 10 years, and this information has been gathered countywide by each county in Pennsylvania and New York. Put it in perspective, 3 Pennsylvania counties, Bradford, Washington, and Susquehanna, each had over 1,000 fracking wells at the end of the study. It ended in 2014. In 2022, there were 3,198 operating fracking wells in Washington County. So those numbers have gone up dramatically. Specifically, the results were analyzed to determine if the increasing number of wells will increase the heart attack, and hospitalizations, and death. And it was done basically on a 100 wells per county. So if there's 100 wells more in that county, that was a benchmark, and it was then compared to the heart attacks. Also, there was a cumulative well density, and that's reflected in those charts. They were looking to see if the heart attack hospitalizations and death was increased if there was more than one well per square mile drilled. The reason for the study: a growing body of medical evidence shows associations between stressors and acute cardiac events, including heart attack. Air pollution is one of these stressors. Exposure to air pollution is recognized as a significant factor for cardiovascular disease by the American Heart Association. Fracking has boomed in the United States, especially in Pennsylvania, and is a growing source of air pollution, creating particulate matter and volatile organic compounds. Recent work has shown that fracking is positively associated with peripheral vascular disease, high blood pressure, and inflammatory markers associated with air pollution. A small study was shown an association between fracking and cardiovascular illness in 45 to 65-year-olds. The present study has the advantage of looking at a much larger group of people and parsing the information a little bit better. Fracking communities, which are rural, may be further compromised by the trend of the regional hospital closures in the United States. And since fracking tends to occur in rural areas, travel times to hospital are generally longer in rural communities. People that live in fracking-exposed areas suffer from cardiovascular disease, may be more likely to have poor health outcomes, including death, just traveling to the hospital. The findings of the study showed, quote, "We found that long-term exposure to fracking is associated with increase in heart attack hospitalization rates among middle-aged men, older women, as well as increased heart death rates among middle-aged men." If you can see the chart, I hope you can. The first one is titled Fracking and Heart Attack Hospitalizations. For men aged 45 to 54, there was a 2.5 increase risk of heart attacks, and 65 to 74 had a 1.4% increase. When I look at that, I think that, well, you perhaps can expect older people to have a higher risk of heart attacks. But the people in the 45 to 54 age group, I think they're babies. No offense, Ned. But they are young people to be having heart attacks. When you look at the women, again, you're seeing the 65 to 74 and 75 plus. They had increased heart attacks. The second group of data is with the well density, where you have that one extra well per square mile. What effect does that have? In women, it raises it about 25%. And again, in those men aged 45 to 54, it's 25%. These guys are babies. Why are they having heart attacks? When you look at the mortality, which is the most important one, I think, when the number of wells in the county is increased by 100, men aged 45 to 54 have a 5.4% increase, but the 65 and 75-year-olds don't. And I scratch my head trying to get my arms around that. I'm going to quote one of the findings of the study. Associations between fracking and heart attack were most consistent among men aged 45 to 54. And you can see they're represented in each of the categories. They have a higher rate. The babies have a higher rate in each of the categories. This study group most likely to be, I'll start again. Association between fracking and heart attack were most consistent among aged men 45 to 54 in our study. This is a group of men most likely to be in the fracking industry workforce, and it's probably the most exposed to fracking and air pollution stressors. I was very surprised to hear that, the high incidence in these young men. These men are in the prime of their life. They have families and children who they're launching into their careers or lives or college. And it's just awful. Between 2010 and 2022, I had a medical practice and had the pleasure of taking care of oil and gas workers, among other people, who were suffering from metabolic and hormonal illnesses. Generally speaking, they were between the ages of 40 and 55, and I guess that's why this finding resonates with me. A few things. I would ask if there's some way that the supervisors can look at maybe a little better protection for our oil fracking workers. I'm not sure if you can or not, but it would be great if you could. I appreciate the many hours that Supervisor Fisher was talking about. I've been here for all 4 of the meetings, and yes, 15 hours is a significant amount of time. But thank you for allowing the public to have input into this critically important issue. And also my sincere thanks to the Cecil Township Supervisors for their work protecting all the citizens of Cecil Township. Thank you.
We're one last,
Mr. Chairman, we have
Expert.
one final speaker, Mr. Kamens, I believe. Is he here? Oh. Mr. Chairman, it's John Kamens.
Good evening. My name is John Kamen. My address is 1806 Frick Building, Pittsburgh, PA 15219. I'm a lawyer, specializes in zoning, land use, and municipal work. I just wanted to, first of all, and I'm also here tonight on behalf of Traditions of America at South Point. First of all, I wanted to thank the supervisors for their time, their energy, and their efforts. I've been to many of these meetings and appreciate all that you've done. I did want to weigh in on the 2,500 foot setback issue, and to tell you that I do not believe it's exclusionary. And I think the fact that you already have the amount of drilling that you have in the township makes it not exclusionary. I would also add that there is no right under Pennsylvania law for the maximally productive use of your land. Now, what that means is you don't have the right to build a skyscraper on your ground just because you want to do that. And what we're talking about here is surface rights, not a prohibition on subsurface operations. So the fact that you are going ahead and saying, I need to have the 2,500 foot setback does not prohibit somebody from going ahead and utilizing their oil and gas rights or profiting from those rights. It just means that you can't have surface operations in those areas. I think under any test that you would have that would be challenged in the court, it would be upheld because you're not banning it, you're merely limiting it, and that is within your right as a township, and that is within your right constitutionally to exercise your police power. And just, I know many of you know this, but I did try the Act 13 case, won in the Supreme Court twice on it. I've had more than 24 appellate cases that are land use cases, including, I believe, the most recent Supreme Court case on zoning. And I can say, based on my knowledge and also based on my experience as a municipal solicitor, that I think the 2,500 foot setback that you're proposing is perfectly reasonable. It's perfectly legal, given everything else that you have in the township. And I would encourage the township supervisors to go ahead and to adopt it. So thank you.
I have a question.
thank you, John.
Can I say something really quick? So when you were just talking, something like dawned on me. Because when people are saying it's exclusionary, they want to pretend like the 5 existing pads aren't there. They didn't happen. But they did, and they are there. But say we gave in and we didn't do 2,500 and we added the 2 spots that are on there, and then they get drilled. Well, then what? Well, then we pretend the 7 that we have don't exist, and we have to add 5 more, And so then you start this like circular, never-ending, we're gonna end up with 100 pads. At some point, you have to actually look at what's existing and not just say, well, they're excluding future development. We're not excluding future development, and we'll talk about the waiver that we're gonna allow, but we are looking at what we actually have. So, thank you, because what
Yeah,
you said.
so I would just add that the argument is similar to the argument that if you were to say, well, I have to allow industrial use everywhere in the township. Well, that's not true, right? Nor do you have to allow residential use everywhere in the township, nor do you have to allow commercial use everywhere in the township.
Yep.
I think there's been a focus that has been very focused on the type of use as opposed to the use category that falls within. And the fact that you have the areas that you have already drilled, you have essentially what is your fair share under the fair share doctrine. And that you have a large portion of the township that can be reached from those sites. And if you look at actually the horizontal drilling technology, it's probably far in excess of what you're showing on your map. And if you think about the fact that there are drilling that could be allowed in other areas, in other townships, that area would allow you to essentially get almost 100% of the township. So again, this is a discussion about surface operations, not a discussion about oil and gas development. And my opinion is, based on your map, and not just what I've seen, but what I've studied, that you have completely more than your fair share of what is required, and that the 2,500 setback is perfectly reasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. All right, if any resident wants to come up and make some comments, please come up in a queue. But again, if you've made comments already and if it's going to be repetitive, that doesn't help.
My name is Janice Blannock, 16 Jupiter Drive. Sorry. So I'm sure all of the supervisors are aware of the major violation at the Augustine well pad several weeks ago on 8/9 at 7:17 a.m., which was a failed well casing. But I do want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what transpired and what that means. In simple terms, the lining of the well that is typically cement, and when it cracks, it can no longer maintain the pressure, causing whatever proprietary chemicals that are in there to leak out and pollute our water supply. As if that's not frightening enough, methane and hydrogen sulfide can enter a well through a damaged or corroded well casing, an improperly sealed well casing, uncased formations, and as dissolved gases being released from well water. Methane and hydrogen sulfide gases in the right mixture with air can be highly explosive. When a gas company notices a drop in pressure, they are required by law to notify the Department of Environmental Protection immediately. The DEP was not notified of the incident until 8/12 at 3:45 p.m. So for 3 days, Range Resources allowed the opportunity of our groundwater to be polluted with toxic chemicals and the very real and dangerous possibility of an explosion. Now, I can't imagine anyone living in this township, whether you're a supervisor or whether you're a range employee, a leaseholder, or a community member looking for a safe and healthy environment to live and raise a family, think that that's okay. Raise of hand, anybody think that's okay? No. Absolutely not. So, this in itself is the exact reason why it is not only necessary to adopt a 2,500-foot setback, but it's urgent. I have been to all the hearings, have spoken at each and every one of them. I have shared my anger and my frustration, my heartfelt, emotional story about the loss of my son. And I know this has been tough for all of you guys on the board, but you accepted the positions with the duty to protect and serve the residents of Cecil Township. So I am pleading with you, all of you, to do the right thing and take this across the finish line. Vote yes on this change.
All right, Michelle. Michelle, come up.
Michelle Stonemark, 40 North DePauli. Mr. Chairman, I was going to talk a little bit about the waiver in what I had prepared. Is that okay if I talk about that?
Sure, we haven't publicized that yet, but if you know about it, you can ask any questions you want.
I mean,
Yeah, you can, because I put it on my Facebook.
oh, okay. I was going to say, I read it on Facebook. First, I would like to thank the supervisors and Gretchen for all the hard work you guys have put in to this ordinance. I know it's been a long process. I know it's been grueling. I know you're tired. I'm tired. So thank you. Thank you for all the effort you've put into this. I am in great support of this ordinance update. And there are a number of reasons why, not including, but highly because of, the things that Janice just talked about. But the one that I'd like to discuss, the main one that I feel needs to be talked about tonight, is that under the old ordinance, it did not provide a voice for surface owners. Only the leaseholders. We were notified about the Augustine well pad, and we had very little time to prepare for a hearing where we had the burden of proof at that hearing. So in a very short period of time, we had to find attorneys and experts and evidence, things that my IT husband and accountant self aren't used to doing. This new ordinance provides a voice for residents like me. It gives them a seat at the table and doesn't leave them scrambling at the very last minute if something's proposed. This ordinance provides everyone, every leaseholder, every surface owner, a say. This levels a very unbalanced playing field. This provides security for all residents. And I humbly ask for the vote of yes on this ordinance.
And if you didn't know what she was talking about, I think it's more the waiver that the protected property owner may be able to offer to the drilling companies, and it gives the drilling companies, which are private, for-profit companies, it gives them the opportunity to drill closer to somebody's house, closer than the 2,400 if a property owner waives that. And in the past, our ordinance was 500 feet, but no property owner could waive that. But also all the other proposals since then, that condition wasn't in there where a property owner can waive it. So we think that gives the property owners more of a say in it, like you said, and it gives the drilling companies more of a chance to negotiate and find property they think works for them.
Just to be clear, if you weren't, so the board is considering getting rid of the map part of the ordinance, and it would just be a setback. It would be a 2,500-foot setback with a waiver, and the waiver would allow anybody within the 2,500 feet to waive their right. But you're essentially taking the risk on yourself, and it's taking us as board members out of the equation. And it's putting it back in the hands of the people that own the properties and in the hands of the drilling industry. So it's really a level playing field for everyone, because if the industry really wants the property, they have the ability to negotiate with the property owner, either by buying their property or making royalty payments or doing things like that, and then you're taking the risk on yourself. In the maps we've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 at this point, I lost track, and we were guessing, and we were saying, okay, we think it should go here, we think it could go here, but we're really just guessing. It takes us out of it, and it puts it back on you as the residents of the township to say, okay, the standard is 2,500 within state limits. You couldn't go closer than 500 because that's a state law. But it puts it back in your hands. Do you want it? Is there enough money that you're willing to sell? Is there not enough money that you would be willing to sign? That's what this board is currently considering. And to be clear, we can't vote on that tonight. We will have to, but we will most likely set a date next, or in November, when we advertise it, but that's what this board is currently considering. Sorry.
Go ahead.
My name is Eileen Leifer, and I am a TOA resident living at 117 Liberty Boulevard. First, I want to thank the board for restoring my faith in the political process. I've never been prouder to be a resident of Cecil Township than I was tonight, listening to Chairperson Cassiola and Supervisor Fisher. Thank you. Range Resources is the primary driller in Cecil with 46 permitted wells. Over the years, they have accrued violations totaling approximately $17 million in fines. So far, in 2024, 44% of the DEP inspections ended with violations, and that's according to DEP compliance data. As Supervisor Fisher stated earlier, Range and other operators don't set out to harm people and the environment beyond the damage done by the process itself. But we have enough experience to know that accidents happen, equipment fails, human error and carelessness are facts of life. Thank you for acknowledging that the job of the supervisors is to protect residents from what we know can happen. And here are just a few examples of what has happened. I'm not going to go into the August 9th incident at the Augustine Well site, but I do want to say that in 2020, there were very serious air quality violations in Mount Pleasant and Cross Creek Townships, just over yonder hills, that resulted in large fines and remedial work. And there have been numerous 2024 DEP violations when 83 gallons of residual waste were released in the soil in Allegheny County. This was from Range. This is the world we're living in. DEP is understaffed, underfunded, and overwhelmed, and relies heavily on industry self-reporting. We know from this township's own experience that operators delay and possibly fail to report. On top of it all, Governor Shapiro has struck a deal with CNX to monitor itself, which conveniently found its own operations to be safe. A challenged DEP, a state that allows industry to monitor itself, and an industry that delays reporting or may not even report at all unless caught, means that the burden falls on the township to protect us, we the people, we your people. And I thank you so, so much for considering this 2,500-foot setback, and I hope that this passes. Thank you so much.
I have a question real quick according to the waiver that we're looking to put into place. Is that for the landowner or for the mineral rights owner?
What, for the waiver? It's for the protected structure owner. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mary Patouillet. I live at 209 Liberty Boulevard with my husband Lee. Lee usually is the one to speak at these. I'm coughing less than he is tonight, and that's why I'm up here. But I first would like to echo the sincere thanks to you, the board, for putting so much time into the zoning ordinance discussions and research over the past several months, and for allowing us to really, truly speak and feel like we're being heard. Your jobs are not easy, but thank you so much to the three experts tonight, because you have given so much real depth of information and credibility to what we have been saying for a while, sometimes very emotionally, but you have grounded it in facts and video and things that can't be argued with. So thank you. Thank you to all the people from TOA South Point and all the communities who have come again and again and again to these meetings. You help advocate for the 2,500 feet, which I think we so desperately need and want. While a 2,500-foot setback is not as great a distance as is in medical and scientific research, it suggests we need much more. It is a reasonable compromise, I would think. So thank you for we strongly encourage the board to approve this. I'd like to close with a quote from the Township of Cecil, Washington County, Pennsylvania Ordinance template. This appears on your ordinances. It says, whereas the Cecil Township Board of Supervisors has the power to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people and property in Cecil Township, then these words are followed by the specifics of the particular ordinance or its revision. Ladies and gentlemen, words matter, but actions matter more and speak louder than words. So we're looking to you. We're encouraged by your words tonight and by your listening, but please don't tell us that you're going to protect us. Show us by approving the 2,500-foot setback. Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Bukovac of Lexington Drive, Lawrence, Pennsylvania, a resident of 24 years. Fracking for natural gas extraction creates potentially harmful health effects during the hydraulic fracturing technique itself and from associated processes including road building, pad clearing, truck trips, drilling, cementing, backflow waters, off-gassing, compressors, and pipelines. Among the most serious source of concern are toxic drilling fluids and fracturing fluids injected deep underground and when withdrawn may contaminate underground and surface waters. Air emissions, including volatile organic compounds, threaten human health, especially of workers and residents of the immediate vicinity. Diesel pollution and noise pollution can be constant as truck traffic is intensive and fracking continues 24/7. Stress factors associated with boom-town growth and effect of the quality of life in communities where drilling occurs. Methane leaks accelerate climate change. Natural gas is primarily composed of methane, and methane is 86 times more potent at capturing heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide over its first 20 years in the atmosphere. These are some of the reasons we need a 2,500-foot setback in Cecil Township. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dino Cibatoni. My family lives at 450 Georgetown Road in Lawrence, PA. Okay, I'll give you this when I'm done. if you'd
Will you
like.
fix
Okay.
the microphone, Jack? Thank you.
I speak tonight in support of a minimum setback of 2,500 feet for oil and gas operations from protected structures in Cecil Township. Granted, even the 2,500 feet is not a safe distance from a hydraulic fracturing site, but it is a minimum distance compromise that we can accept. We all know that the air and water pollution caused by fracking is not restricted to the well pad site. The question is, how willing are we to risk the health and safety of our neighbors to increase our own wealth? We can try to justify our actions by pointing to the jobs created, but no job is good that puts our neighbors in danger of contracting cancer. We can also claim that what is done on our land is within our rights, but our rights end where they infringe upon the rights of others. None of us think our neighbors would be justified in opening a chemical dump, explosives factory, or radioactive waste disposal site next door to us, but some of us think that it is okay to operate a noisy, toxic fracking well pad on our own property without considering our neighbor's right to a peaceful, clean environment. Some would like to have the 10 Commandments prominently displayed in our schools along with the inclusion of student prayer. Why? Do we like props and paying lip service to God? What matters is what is in our hearts. Christ said that what we do to the least amongst us, we do to him. Do we want to make his residence a place where it is not safe for him to breathe the air or drink the well water? Do we want to subject his house to seismic activity from the hydraulic fracturing process and tell him that any needed structural repairs are his responsibility? Do we want to steal from him by lowering his property values? Do we want to return the peace that he gave to us with constant noise and bright lights? I don't want my afterlife spent on a well pad due to my lack of consideration for my neighbors. We live in a fallen world that can cloud our judgment. Please take a moment to consider your actions tonight with your neighbor's best interests in mind, and I am confident you will do the right thing. Thank you for granting me the time to speak on this matter, and a special thanks to Supervisor Fisher and Casciola for allowing us to put this forward. Thank you.
It's a quick question, quick answer.
Hi, my name's Scott Bird, 1401 Lexington Drive, resident of Georgetown. First meeting, and the second meeting, everybody in favor, well, opposing the ordinance wore neon yellow. Some residents and others at Georgetown were wearing all black tonight in memory of the students who died from this already in Cannon Mac and anybody else in the Washington County area who's sick from it. Tom said, don't repeat yourself. We don't want to keep lining up saying the same thing, talking about the same gases. Dr. Gatire here was my pediatrician from birth. This guy should be on a beach somewhere, but he's still advocating for the youth in the community. That speaks volumes. Tom said at the beginning of the meeting, it's a democracy. We vote for you. I don't hear anybody from Range or anybody opposed coming up here and saying how this is safe. They tried, and then Cindy hit them with a cross that should have been on Law and Order. Just thinking at it it sounded promising from the beginning of the meeting, but we don't know every supervisor's position on this yet, so we still feel obligated to make our pleas. You have the just common sense element behind it, and speaking specifically, researching the online presence of Supervisor Barney and Agizio, we line up, I'm far right, very conservative. I'm drill, baby, drill, but I'm not kill, baby, kill. This needs to be done safely, and there's a lot of rolling hills around here that can be done. If Range Resources doesn't like that, invest in the R&D to get more miles horizontally. It's unacceptable. We saw on the presentation how the gas just encroaches everybody's property. If you're doing that with something that was seen with the naked eye, that would be a huge issue. But this got away for so long. People are getting sick. It's unacceptable. And we're here an additional time, and we just hope this is the last one. And I plead to my fellow conservatives on the board, I don't think this is an issue of property rights necessarily as an issue is for public health. They have 5 well pads. We're drilling. We're going to continue to drill. We just don't want any more dead kids. Like, that's the worst fear of mine. If my 3-year-old can come up here and say he doesn't want poisoned, he would, but he can't, so I'm doing it for him. We don't want our kids poisoned. Please. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leah Lipner, 411 Independence Way, Traditions of America. First, I would like to thank you for the due diligence and the hard work you put through these past many months trying to come up with an ordinance that'll work for the people. With that said, I agree that the overlay map should be thrown out. There are a few errors there. Also, I am pleased that you are considering the 25-foot setback. However, health and safety still remain a major concern. No one should become ill from the air they breathe, the water they drink. Not another child should die from disease caused by poison that the oil and gas companies pump into the earth. The cancer these children develop is caused by a chromosomal abnormality. That is, it's not inherited, but it is acquired. Stricter health and safety regulations should be in place to guard all residents. We cannot depend on the Environmental Protection Agency, whose job it is to protect our citizens. The book Amity and Prosperity has taught us this lesson. And if you look at a lot of the range employees, they're former DEP. No zoning laws should be changed that would result in turning residential areas into industrial areas. This is unacceptable, and I've heard the rumors. The residents living near Augustine Well need greater protection from the horrible conditions they are forced to live with. I know. I went there, I visited, I saw, and it's just horrible. The wells close to the middle school, in my opinion, should be shut down to protect the health and welfare of students. However, we know that's not going to happen. The one well is approximately 1,532 feet away. We, the citizens of Cecil Township, must forever be a watchdog going forward.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone here, for coming and voicing your concerns on this most important matter. Board members.
What's your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Gary Lipner, 411 Independence Way, Canonsburg, TOA. Sorry. I'd like to thank the board members, as always, for giving us their time, dedication, especially to Cindy Fisher, who has come to TOA to meet with us. It was very helpful. Tom Cacciola, your comments at the beginning were outstanding. Very important. What you said was spot on. I'm a retired professional firefighter. I'd like to assign each and every one of you from me an honorarium as our political firefighters. I hope you will never have to endure what the brave men and women have to put up with going into some of these dangerous situations. I hope you will never be threatened by a falling building or a burning fire. So please don't make us have to risk our lives. As firefighters now, you know you can protect, like we did for many years, the citizens here of Cecil Township. We voluntarily were taken by range to the Augustine well site. I was kind of shocked at the lack of on-site security and how easy it would be for someone to cause a disaster. I've seen disasters. They are unplanned and scary because you just don't know how they're going to react. You never know. I have courses in fire science. Understanding what fire and disasters do is really complicated. Every scenario is different. I also was kind of surprised at when I asked one of the tour guides, what happens when there's a disaster? And he said to me, well, we call a contractor. Where is this contractor coming from? So if it's on Thanksgiving, does he come, or is he having turkey with his family? The volunteer firefighters here in Cecil Township, are they trained in a disaster like this? Is there a hazmat team nearby that is also trained in gas and oil disasters? I haven't seen anything to prove any of those facts. We all seen East Palestine. We've all seen shootings. We've all seen disasters, houses that blow up in neighborhoods. Things happen, and they will continue to happen. But we need to have the training and expertise that you can provide us with a 2,500-foot setback. Thank you.
I can bring this way down here. My name is Lisa Boving Learned, and I live at 254 Liberty Boulevard in Traditions of America. And I also want to start by thanking the board and all the work that you have done. I'm going to sort of jump around here because I don't want to repeat a lot. But on August 15th, an above-ground water pipeline blew out between the Yonker Well tank pad and Cam's Well tank pad in Mount Pleasant Township, owned by Range. The blowout was caused by a pig sent through the pipeline to clear debris, which I'm told is normal operation. Range was cited for failing to properly notify the DEP in a timely manner. What is unclear is how long the ruptured pipe leaked toxins. We know it was long enough for the pipe to whip around like a garden hose and rip at least 20 fence posts and 100 feet of wire along the edge of the pasture. How long it took the property owner to learn about the rupture, respond, and report that, we don't know. We only know the DEP arrived a day later, quote, after conferring with Range reps on the phone. Readings were taken, and they're supposed to submit a report, but I haven't seen that yet. But the incident isn't a one-off. As many others have said, thousands of citations are written across the industry every single year. The week of August 23rd alone, there were 85 conventional and 10 unconventional violation notices written. The industry insists they are good neighbors. They care about our community. But the record shows time and again hundreds of violations, abandoned wells, leaking pipes, and storage containers. Meanwhile, they refuse to acknowledge the growing body of evidence the chemicals the industry uses are toxic and causing untold health harms. If I damage my neighbor's property or take careless action that causes them harm, I am honor-bound to fix that without being told. This industry is always being told they have to be made to do the right thing. We shouldn't have to bear the burden of that. And I think that that has been shown over and over again, is we're the ones that are holding the bag. What we need is relief from you, our elected leaders, this board. You have the power to fix the historically insufficient regulation of this industry. This board must be proactive in protecting the citizens of Cecil Township, and I thank you for listening and hearing us. I also support the 2,500 square foot setback. I'm just going to take a quick moment. I know I'll probably run out of time, but I'm a retired police sergeant, 25 years. I'm going to add on to what my neighbor said. Really, I hope that you are looking at regulations down the road because something will happen. I have been on the scenes of hazardous materials releases, and unlike the fire department, your Cecil Township police officer doesn't have a hazmat suit and all the things that he needs. I guarantee it. So please, think about those things as you go forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Good evening, board members. My name is Tim Camus. I reside on 2039 Dantry Drive in the Overlook at South Point community. I'm currently the president of the board of directors of the subdivision. The Overlook is an R2 zone community consisting of 364 housing units. As your work directly impacts the residents of the Overlook, since April, I have followed and I have participated in the hearings that were held concerning amending the existing oil and gas ordinances. I applaud the board for taking on this issue and addressing the current concerns of your people. Thank you very much. This has truly been remarkable for me to see this work in action. I spent 32 years as a federal law enforcement officer,
protecting this nation and the crimes that occur. And I have to tell you, the last 15 years of my career as a senior executive at the Department of the Treasury. So I know a little bit about how difficult it is to work with people and govern. And this is truly a remarkable situation where people who feel strongly about their health and welfare and the value of their property and the health of their children have come to you and given you evidence and testimony during hearings, and you've responded by continuing to listen, continuing to adjust. Not every decision that you made has been the best. Some of the plans had to be put to the side. But I honestly believe, after reading everything, that you've come to the right conclusion, that the 2,500-foot setback is the best way to go for the community, and by giving the property owners the right to negotiate with each other if they want to put a well on the property, I think that's an equitable position for everybody. But I just really want to thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has been saying, but on behalf of myself and everybody that thinks like I do, your job's difficult, and I know it's been difficult, but we thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is John Bodner, and I live in Cecil Township. And I'd like to thank, once again, the supervisors for allowing me to speak. And I'd like to thank all the Cecil Township residents who worked so hard in trying to do the right thing and get a setback of 2,500 feet. There was a lot I wanted to talk about. 3 minutes doesn't give me much. But the big thing about health of people, I wasn't even going to bring this up. The doctor mentioned it. We have a friend, a very close friend, that died last year. She was 55 years old, single mother. She worked in a chemical industry selling chemicals to the companies at the well pads, demonstrating the chemicals, showing the chemicals, being exposed to the chemicals. Cancer and ravaged her body, her brain, her lungs, her liver, her intestine. We saw a very, very vibrant mother friend die, emaciated from cancer. And there's no way in the world that you can tell me that that cancer wasn't caused by those well pads, because nobody in her family had this type of cancer. All right? It's very dear to us. I want to make sure that maybe the workers, maybe we can protect the workers, or they wake up. And I'd also like to say about our schools. I talked here before, but I didn't mention our schools. Hills Henderson Elementary, which is right by us off Mayview Road. We sit in a temperature inversion area, which means the weather in the winter and the summer sags with no wind. We're in the Chartiers Creek Valley. And when the air sits, it sits with everything in the air, the chemicals that are produced. There was a graphic on the screen showing infrared chemical air going up. It didn't show it settling in the valleys. That chemical is breathed in by all of us. It's breathed in by our children. It's breathed in by grandchildren. Young lungs are very susceptible, and that never, ever disappears. It never leaves their body. It's time to make a decision. We can't solve all the problems, but maybe we can make it a little better. Maybe instead of having the water legacy, what coal did to our streams, destroy them all, we look back from 100 years ago and say, and we could have made a difference. Today, we have these chemicals. We have no idea what we're dealing with. It's frightening. And I said it before, the future terrifies me because I don't know what the chemicals are going to do. Let's not be a group of people that say, forget it. Let's look at it. Let's say, hey, we can make a difference. And maybe in 100 years down the road, 150, when we're all gone, people say, look, the residents of Cecil Township at least tried to help us. Maybe not everybody listened, but they tried. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm glad Darlene did that. I'm glad Darlene did that. I wouldn't do this, Chairman. I'm too chicken shit.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly, and I will keep my comments brief. Excuse me, of course, my name is John Kettering. I am an attorney for Petrogallo, Gordon, Alfano, Bostic, Responte. Our address is 1 Oxford Center, 38th floor in Pittsburgh. I am here on behalf on the estate of Elizabeth Cowden. I respect what the board is faced with here, and I respect what the members of the public are doing here. And I understand that this is a hot topic with inflamed passions on either side. I would just like to present to the board concerns from a landowner who may be impacted by these decisions. As a landowner, you understand that there are certain limitations that governing bodies can enact. That being said, those limitations are subject to restrictions at both the state and federal level that prohibit an all-out taking of property or a taking that would substantially reduce the ability to develop the property. I'd like to point out that this is a taking of significant economic value to landowners, and that your decisions will have substantial economic and financial decisions.
Can you hold the microphone just so that you can be heard a little bit? Just pull it out and hold it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that better? Cool. Okay, thank you. The decisions will have substantial economic and financial determinations on landowners. Your decisions, including the ability to restrict the property's use, is one that goes right to the heart of property ownership. Now, I understand that procedurally, we are here as the board today, and that the board is considering a change on its proposed ordinance that would put into place a waiver for the setback requirements. While I commend the board's efforts and the stated efforts to remove itself from the decision, what I fear may happen is that it may make the decision worse. In fact, by putting a waiver into it, it gives the neighboring landowners and gives everyone a say over what you do with your property. If this comes into place, you then have neighboring landowners fighting over the issue that the board has looked to move away from. I respect what the board is trying to do, and I respect the informed and vigorous debate on the topic. But I would just point forth that as landowners, there are rights that need to be protected, and the board should and needs to take those rights into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Can you stay? Because I want to say a couple things. Gretchen, do you want to speak first? Or you weren't going to say anything? Okay, so quickly, this is your first meeting. We've had now our fourth meeting. This is our fourth meeting. We presented experts in noise, health and safety, legal to back up this decision. And I'm sure you're aware that Huntley versus Huntley, the Supreme Court concluded that the Oil and Gas Act's preemptive scope is not total. And so the court found that the Oil and Gas Act does not prohibit municipalities from enacting traditional zoning regulations that identify which uses are permitted in different areas of the locality, even if such regulations preclude the oil and gas drilling in certain zones. So it's saying, hey, you can't just allow drilling or you don't have to just allow drilling everywhere. We can limit where it goes and how it's enacted. Also, in Robinson, the Supreme Court determined that portions of the Oil and Gas Act unconstitutionally deprive municipalities of the ability to make zoning decisions about oil and gas extraction. We don't have to allow chicken farms everywhere. We don't have to allow housing plans everywhere. We don't have to allow anything everywhere. We are allowing for oil and gas development. And while I understand the estate of Elizabeth Cowden may or may not want oil and gas development on their property, we have a right to zone, and we have a right to decide where things go in our township and what that looks like. In fact, we have an obligation to do it. So while I appreciate you coming here tonight, we know what we're doing, and we're making very educated decisions in doing that.
And I want to clarify one thing about the waiver. If the setback is 2,500 feet and I'm 1,800 feet from it, on my protected structure, I can grant a waiver. But if she's 1,900 feet and she doesn't grant a waiver, my waiver really didn't help the drilling company unless he works with her also. So it's not like I can preempt her distance, and we're very careful.
I want to be considerate of the board's time and the procedures here. May I respond? My understanding of the waiver issue is that if you were, a landowner was to waive the setback requirement, it would put the wellhead closer to whoever their adjoining neighbor is. That,
No, so the waiver provision basically will say, if that's the direction the board wants to go in, that you as a landowner can waive the 2,500-foot setback, but in no way can you go closer than the state minimum, which is 500. But also, every property owner who has a protected structure within that 2,500 feet would also have to waive. So you just can't waive and then impact a neighboring property owner who might be within that 2,500 foot.
correct, and that's my
Yes.
understanding, is
Okay.
that, so in order to actually affect a waiver, you would need essentially all landowners.
If there is more than one property owner within the 2,500 feet, correct.
So as, I believe, I stated in the presentation, or at least in my comments, is that I understand and appreciate the efforts to do that, but what I think that creates is an even further muddling of the issue, whereas a property owner now not only does not have to adhere to the government zoning regulations, I now, as a property owner, need to bargain with all of my neighbors before I
But
decide.
wait a minute, there's a misunderstanding. If I said if I'm 1,800 feet and I waive it, and she's 1,700 feet and she waives it, and nobody else waives it, they can drill within 1,700 feet of her and 1,800 feet of me. But they don't need everybody else to allow, to get the drill.
That's
if
not
there's
true, Tom.
No, not if there's another protected structure within 2,500 feet.
Well, sure, I'm saying
Correct.
if we were the closest, if I was the closest that was interfering with her 2,500 foot, she was second closest.
No, because if somebody's 2,300
Everybody
feet-
within that 2,500-foot circle would have to sign off on it. It is not, this guy does it, that guy does it.
Yes.
It would have to be everybody in that 2,500-foot
The
circle.
reason we did that, the reason we came up with this, can you be quiet for 1 second? The reason that we came up with this is because drilling goes outside of the impacts go outside the borders of your property. So like Supervisor Cassiola said at the beginning, you don't have a right to utilize your property in a way that affects or impacts your neighbors. And that's what's happening with drilling. So we're saying everybody that's in that impact zone, that 2,500 feet, needs to sign off. So if I'm 2,300, and it puts it in the hands of the people that are going to be and are impacted. That's what it does. So you can disagree, you can agree whether, and the state of Elizabeth County can challenge it, but it puts it back in the hands of the people that are actually going to be impacted.
I will, I appreciate the explanation, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of the board to help discuss this issue. I would reserve comments until the actual text ordinance is proposed or any new notices are given. That being said, I would put forth again our concern that as a property owner, you have now created a tangled web as to interlocking property owners telling each neighbors what to do.
Yep.
We will have it available shortly. The MPC requires us to give 45 days' notice for the Washington County Planning Commission and our Planning Commission. So after 45 days from now, you're going to see it at our meeting tonight. We're going to set a date 45 days after this to set a new hearing and a new special meeting to act on it. So there will be a hearing with that information that you're looking for.
I appreciate that, Chairman. I appreciate the time, members of the board. Thank you.
Ashley Jardina, 214 Francis. That's okay. Ashley Jardina, Giardina, 214 Francis Lane, McDonald, PA, 15057. First, I appreciate this board for considering the oil and gas changes. I, too, have been at all the meetings, so I've been here along with many other familiar faces, so we all appreciate it. As it's been mentioned, it's the duty of this board to uphold the health and safety and the welfare of the citizens of the township, not to vote in the interest of their own pocketbooks, whether that means you own properties with well pads or you're involved in a business that provides oil and gas services to oil and gas companies. It is also not the board's duty to cater to the select number of citizens who gain financial interest from oil and gas. Residents of Cecil are at the mercy of big business, which is Range Resources. We have given Range the chance to do right by all citizens, and they just haven't. As we've heard, expert shows us the pollution that sits less than 500 feet from people's homes with young children in them. These people are unfortunately experiencing these things every day. So you give them an inch and they take a mile. How many more times are we going to be fooled by range resources? This 2,500-foot setback gives citizens the right to health and safety that we deserve. Literally, that's all we're asking for. Like literally, that's all we're asking for. I have an 18-month-old daughter, and my biggest fear is hearing stories from other residents who have children have passed, and that is my biggest fear. As another gentleman mentioned, he has young children. Let's put children at the forefront here and where they grow up. We kindly ask that you approve this 2,500-foot setback to protect the citizens of Cecil. Thank you.
Adele Gouge, 980 Road.
You might have to hold it. It's working better if you hold
Is
it.
this okay?
Sorry.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I, too, thank you for your time. I've been to all of the meetings. I've talked, probably at every meeting. And as Supervisor Fisher explained, you all took an oath to protect us. I do support the new ordinances, especially the noise ordinance. As you know, one of the sound surveys was actually done from my yard, which sounds like a 24/7 industrial operation. And there's a lot of families here tonight that don't want a well 2,500 feet from their home, but I'm one of the families that is stuck with my house under that setback. So, like I said, it's an industrial operation that's running 24/7 when they're drilling. And after listening to the experts, I don't know how I can let my kids live like this beside their home and their intermediate school without continuing to ask questions. Unfortunately, telling us the existing pads are grandfathered is not sufficient. I'm worried about our air and water, and we need to find a way to at least request range to make some changes. One of my big concerns is that range will just keep adding more wells at the current pads that they already have approved. So I have a question, if they would be allowed to do more than they are approved already, and if yes, would the new ordinances apply? I'm worried that if we're restricting where they are allowed to drill, they are just going to keep putting more wells on their existing pad.
Can't. So if
So
they,
they
have,
do, and they have at Augustine, right?
No, the township's position has always been, when they come here for an approval, whatever they are approved for is what is allowed. If they want to expand beyond that approval, they need to come back with an additional application and go through an additional process. And if they did that application now, then whatever ordinance in the form when it passes is what applies.
but there's more than.
So what would the process be if they're at Schultz and they're approved for 15, they've done 4, they're coming back to do 2, they finish those and they put in an application for more?
For more than 15, that's a new application.
The new ordinance would
It's a
apply.
new application, and whatever ordinance is in place at that time will apply to that application.
And there would be voting on that?
But it would be based on the
new
new ordinance. So they couldn't even
Correct.
apply, if you were within 2,500 feet and you didn't sign a waiver, say this ordinance passed, and your home is within 2,500 feet, even if there's an existing pad, if they've met their max pad and they want to, or max wells on that pad, they would have to reapply under the new ordinance, it would be denied, because they couldn't even apply, because they wouldn't meet the conditions of the ordinance.
Okay, so the new setback would apply, people in that zone would have to sign a waiver, and the new noise ordinance would apply?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tom Ague, and I live at 5005 Ashley Lane in Hill Station Manor. The gentleman before me took care of one of my questions, and that was about the waiver and the 2,500 feet surrounding the waiver. But I have 2 other questions. We've heard from Ms. DiTullio and some other people here about all of the problems with the wells that have been in the state of Pennsylvania. Is there a way for the supervisors to have a well shut down that continues to violate the regulations and the rules about
exposures and failures to maintain the wells?
I think Gretchen can talk more on that, but we're really preempted from taking care of health issues. The DEP takes that as in their domain. Gretchen?
Right, if there are violations of, so our powers are what they are, and if they are in violation of our ordinance, again, if they were approved under the old ordinance is what applies to their operations. And if there is a violation, we have the power to issue notices of violation. That is what is, when there are zoning, issues with zoning, that's the process. And that's what this township can do. Those are the extent of its powers.
But he's asking about,
Not on air.
Health issues.
Right, only if they are violating our ordinance, can we issue a notice of violation.
So if you're
If they
specifically.
continue that action or failure to remedy that action, can they be shut down by you or by the state?
If they are in violation of our ordinance, we have the ability to go to court to seek injunctive relief, but again, they need to be in violation of our ordinance. We do not have an error provision in our ordinance currently. Remember, the ordinance that is on the books right now.
Right. But in the new ordinance, would you?
No, there's an error monitoring process and reporting, because we do not control enforcement of error.
Okay, that takes care of my other question then. One suggestion, structures are not just buildings or churches or schools or hospitals. Structures are also other features that exist within the township.
Right.
And I'm thinking of structures that should be added to the definition. And those would be Chartiers Creek and Miller's Run Creek. Both of those should be added to the definition of a structure, not just building.
So that is governed by the DEP. We can't put in rules to protect, it's called the waters of the Commonwealth. So.
But you are putting in rules that define structures.
It's stupid, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, and without giving any information away, like, there's a resident who's been dealing with an issue for the past 5 months, and we can't get the DEP to determine something one way or the other, but it is out of our hands, in the hands of the DEP. The waters of the Commonwealth are not regulated by us.
Okay.
I wish it was.
Yeah,
but
I just
it's not.
remember the fish kill that happened in 2021 in Chartiers Creek, and I would not want a well to cause something like that. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Nikki Paulus. I reside at 54 Windcrest Drive, Cecil, 15321. I just want to thank everyone for listening to our concerns. Even if you disagree with them, I just want to say, as a resident of the past 21 years out here, thank you for listening. I've been here multiple times with different issues, and this is the very first time that I'm truly feeling like there is movement, and I just appreciate that as a resident. Also, just want to state, I don't think that we should necessarily be considering estates of people when they're, I'm thinking the Cowden estate is okay, whether if we change this ordinance or not. Just wanted to add that in there. And then also, I was wondering if we can add the DEP and the EPA ordinances in with our own ordinances. That way, we do have recourse. So if someone, is harming the environment and spills and things of that nature, why can we not add that in to our own ordinance?
It's out of our hands.
I mean, we can rat them out. If we see something, we can call the DEP, but on
Right.
issues like pollution and spills, that's just not our area of jurisdiction. But like I said, we can
Yeah, it's-
tell them we saw something and hope they respond to us and go out there, but we
Right.
can't actually go after them.
Certain things are directly preempted, certain things.
Okay.
And we're trying to cover as much as we think we can cover legally with our ordinance.
Okay, I just didn't know if, my train of thought is if we back them up saying, hey, yes, we want to also follow the DEP and the EPA, just to kind of almost give double coverage. I know that we're not necessarily the ones that would go after them, but just to even have that language written in there, I wasn't sure, I guess, why we couldn't do it. I'm no lawyer, though, But just to say, hey, this township wants and is going to follow the DEP regulations and the EPA regulations as well. So I'm just throwing that out there. Again, if it can't be done, it can't be done, but I just feel like the redundancy, if anything, might be able to help. But I just wanted to, again, say thank you, wanted to show my face, just hoping to see this through. And one last question, how many permits are out there that have not been yet fulfilled but already approved? Do we have a number on that?
I can do the math, hold on, I can do the math.
Cindy said she's looking it up.
Well, I have to do the math. So there's, you have to like look at each pad. So we have 5 approved pads. Augustine has 12 approved, they've drilled 9. Bernard Schultz has 14 approved, they've drilled 5. Connor Samuel has 14 approved, they've drilled none. Engel and Troyer have 8, I believe, and they've drilled 4 on each of those. Can you pull it down? I'm sorry, 10. And so it's just the difference between what's been approved, and that's the max number that would fall under the old ordinance.
Okay.
The new ordinance would take over for any additional permits.
Right, I understand the grandfathering process. I wanted to just hear the numbers as to what's still floating out there. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Can you do me a favor? Please be respectful of the person that's talking and be quiet and listen. Thank you. It's hard to hear when people are talking.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Maureen Mueller. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay? Is that better? Yeah? If it stops moving, maybe. My name is Maureen Mueller. I live at 441 980 Road, McDonald. And my questions concern along the lines of the future development. So the land guy who came to my house only spoke specifically about Marcellus Shale. He said there would be future development in the Utica Shale, which is underneath. And so would those wells also be a part of this new process where they would have to then reapply to drill in those? Or is there some weird way, like I'm not an engineer on this, to know could they access existing Marcellus wells and just go deeper to get to the Utica Shale?
Yes.
They can. So they don't have to reapply for under this new ordinance? Would they have to reapply?
If they're coming back to re-drill a well, they would, because keep in mind they're
But
already.
if it's on the same pad and on the same well, could they just?
Well, they're not going to go down the same.
I don't know.
Well, if it's in production, and ours aren't old enough at this point, except for maybe Engel and Troyer, to go down the same well. So any additional wells, even if it's on an existing pad over what they applied for, they would have to come back in for another conditional use hearing, and it would follow the new ordinance, whatever that is.
And another question, also again about future development and things. Have we heard anything about underground gas storage? Would that be something that we would have to permit as a township? So there are big places, there's a big problem actually out in California, a place called Aliso Canyon or Porter Ranch, where they had just a big underground area where they store gas, and unfortunately it leaked and it made a lot of people sick. So how, given all of our mines, is that something, would we ever be notified of that as residents? Would we ever find out if they're going to have plans for this underground storage? I mean, there's already these wells all over Pennsylvania.
Yes, with any sort of.
That's a good question that maybe we could ask the DEP. I mean, they're the ones that would have jurisdiction there, so that's a good question to ask them, and we will.
But they'll still have to notify us, even if we don't have the ability to permit. We'll ask.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Emily Rodovich, and I live at 1495 Yorktown Drive in Georgetown Estates, Lawrence. Thank you. I'm here just to present some facts for all of us to kind of keep in our heads. and as you move forward as well. And I'm going to begin with an excerpt from the grand jury report of 2020. Quote, "Fracking wells are a geological crapshoot. Landowners who sell their mineral rights often have no idea what it really involves. And people who buy property after rights have already been sold or who live next to someone else who sold have no choice in the matter. Water, and here's one of those things, water and wastewater pipelines and natural gas gathering pipelines running between well pads and other facilities are not regulated by any state agency for safety. There are no construction and operational standards and no criteria selecting their routes. Add to this another fact, that Washington County not only has the most prolific and dense fracking infrastructure in the state, it is home to active longwall mining, which removes coal from underground. So we have two industries here drilling underground, and those two industries collide from time to time. Cecil Township, up to June 30th of 2024, has had liquid fracking well waste produced that would be equivalent to approximately 6,907 18-wheeler tanker truckloads. This constant, and I'm not going to repeat, you've heard about the traffic and the noise and the air pollution. So we need to be 2,500 feet at least. This is important. There is no proven method to safely dispose of fracking wastewater. That's it. I'm cutting things out that are repetitive, and these are just a few facts that reveal the threats of fracking. Thank you for considering this setback.
Hi, my name is Deborah Lee. I'm at 1411 Lexington, Lee. 1411 Lexington Drive in Georgetown Estates. I have a couple of questions that I'd like to kick off with before I do my 10 minutes. Is that okay?
You're what?
Yeah?
You're 3 minutes.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, to the
But
board.
you get 3 minutes, not 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I didn't want you to think.
Asking the board, on the new ordinance, I understand that all of the provisions that are on the current 1,000-foot ordinance will remain the same with the exception of the setback definition. Is that correct?
No, there's several conditions that were removed. There were several conditions that were added, like the ability to waive your protected structure. The new ordinance will eliminate all overlay maps and any and every site map that might have been there. There won't be any map, but it'd be just a distance.
Okay. Well, I guess my question really comes down to, will the setback and the other regulations around testing, pre-construction testing and noise and vibrations and air quality, will all of those apply also to the midstream facilities, such as compressor stations and gas processing plants?
Yes, they're named in it. They are.
So they will all be part of that?
Yes.
Okay, so then kicking the question over to Christina, you talked mostly about the emissions coming from well pads. Can you talk for a second about how that translates to compressor stations?
Well, we're not on a compressor station yet. We're trying to get our ordinance in place for the drilling and the setback. Let us get to that point first. Yeah, let's stay on
It's
track.
all dirty and
for a
dangerous.
second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Also, Cindy, the map that you showed with all of the diagonal hash marks, were those marks to indicate where not only surface operations, but
They're lateral lines.
They're-
So
they're
well
high-
pads
they're-
can only go in
Okay.
one direction laterally.
Yeah.
And so our engineer drew lateral lines from each pad to show where it can access, and then that's how it came up with that.
Okay.
That wasn't depicting where they are today.
Correct.
There might be some there on those lines, but it's a depiction of where
It
they
could
can
be.
reach today
Right.
on approved sites.
Okay, from the 5 approved sites.
And including a couple of off-township sites too.
Right, coming
On
our way.
bordering townships, yes.
Okay, thank you. So if I could start my 3 minutes now. The move to a 2,500-foot setback is a strong affirmation that you guys have listened to public outcry and evidence-based concerns. Please let these be the determining factors as you consider your position and vote on the pending revisions to the oil and gas ordinance. Thanks in large part to these hearings, we have learned so much about the impact of the gas industry on Washington County. And I deeply appreciate the board's willingness to reconsider the ordinance as evidence unfolds. We've learned that there's pronounced and sustained human suffering due to fracking and its related operations in our township. We've learned that we cannot escape the toxic air polluted with hydrocarbons, the water and ground poisoned with carcinogens, the incessant noise and vibrations that make
Please,
living
she has the floor. Please give her the attention.
an everyday struggle. I've learned about people who have lost their water, whose children are severely asthmatic and covered in rashes, and who have had to incur legal costs far exceeding their means just to defend themselves against this assault. I'm talking about families like the Goulas and the Hallowiches and the Blanocks, the Borellos, the Stonemarks, the Lacaniches, and countless others. I've learned that the industry operators and other players are chronic violators who most typically are levied fines that they likely consider the cost of doing business as they continue to bully their way across our landscape. This is an industry which is exempt from the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. We've learned that government oversight by the DEP is woefully lacking, and that citizens are oftentimes left to deal with consequences on their own, oftentimes consequences that never go away. Please vote to adopt a 2,500-foot setback for homes and a 5,000-foot setback for schools. Please protect the people you have pledged to protect. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Gannon, and I live on Old Farm Road in Lawrence in the Georgetown Townhome community. I just had a couple, possibly two questions, and that's it. It's regarding the voting time element when you will be you'll be voting on this concern. First of all, how long does it take usually, or has it taken in the past, to get approval for the pads, for you to actually give approval to the company? Approval for the pad to be built?
Through a conditional use process.
Does it take months, or can it take a couple months?
We hold a hearing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it can take several months depending on how many hearings there are. We're obligated to hold the first hearing within 60 days of the application. We have to hold subsequent hearings 45 days thereafter. Sometimes you can have multiple hearings related to one application. And then once the hearings close, they have 45 days to vote.
So with that in mind, Is there a chance that new approvals would be taking place before the vote?
No, because it's a pending ordinance doctrine, so we've already announced
Oh,
the
I see. That's
changing.
the
So
legalese,
any new
okay.
applications would fall under the new ordinance.
Okay, good. Thank you for
You're
everything. And I will reiterate what many have said. Thank you for everything thank you for everything you're doing for us. We do appreciate it very much.
I'm Nancy Aloy Edmonds. I live at 1164 Old Farm Road in Georgetown Estates. I'd like to make a few acknowledgments this evening. First, a thank you to the hundreds of people who have shown up in the past few months to the supervisors' meetings and the hearings to learn more about the fracking industry and to demonstrate their deep concerns. They represent just a fraction of the people who feel just as they do, but were unable to be here physically. We believe that their presence was noted. Second, I'd like to offer appreciation and respect for the dozens of residents and experts who have stood at this microphone and passionately pleaded for their concerns to be addressed. They spoke for many who were too uncomfortable to make public comments but feel just as strongly. We believe their voices were heard. You've all made a difference. Finally, I'd like to express gratitude to the supervisors who are willing to vote for increasing the setbacks. Mr. Cacciola and Ms. Fisher, your comments this evening were especially appreciated. I think you heard our voices, and we appreciate that very much. Should you proceed with voting against the proposed overlay and ordinance that's calling for only 1,000-foot setbacks, your actions will demonstrate that you are fulfilling your sworn duty to represent the residents of Cecil Township to protect our health, safety, and welfare of the people and the property of Cecil Township. And you have fulfilled the commitments outlined in the written ordinances that you put forth to give careful consideration to public comments. For that, we thank you. Finally, as we go forward, I respectfully request that the supervisors and their subcommittees will continue to communicate with one another, to offer open dialogue with each other and the community, and to communicate transparently with the citizens of Cecil Township. Most importantly, we beg you to hold the industry accountable to all of the regulations in the proposed ordinance. We are all too aware, as many have spoken, of the multiple violations that have already occurred in the township and in their failure to notify the township and residents. We understand the pressure that this board is under from residents who stand to make significant financial gain from the leases they hold, from the industry, and even from the state government. We simply ask that all of your decisions and your intentions focus on the health, safety, and well-being of all of the residents of Cecil Township. This will be your legacy. We are counting on you to do the right thing and vote yes on the 2,500-foot setback ordinance. Sincere thanks for taking this monumental step toward a healthier community. We appreciate and applaud those of you who are voting for this measure. Thank you.
Hi guys, AC Rowland, 52 Sycamore Street, troublemaker. Okay, point one. I want to expand on what Lisa, the previous speakers, spoke about this extra blowout on August 15th at the above-ground Yonkers well pad in Tanks. Apparently, late on the 14th, a pig was sent through the wastewater pipeline, got stuck in the water line, causing it to blow apart and sending the pig into the air and doing property damage and almost 100 feet of wire pasture. Yet Range did not report anything. It took at 11:15 a.m. on August 15th when the landowner was going to come out and put cattle into the field when he noticed his fencing was gone. He even said in the report, "Thank God I did not have any animals in that field." Then it took an additional day, and at 10:03 a.m. on the 16th, DEP oil and gas inspectors, after previously talking with Range, then their representative Derek Zoflak by phone, finally somebody went out to look at what the issue was. So my question too is,
Why are waste and wastewater pipelines and natural gas gathering pipelines running between these pads and between these facilities? Why are they not regulated? Why are we not informed as citizens, just like you do when there's a flood, when there's other issues in our township, there's a tornado, there's other things going on? You guys post and let us as citizens, taxpayers, and voters know. We get nothing when it comes to our health and safety from these oil operators. Why? There is no construction or operational standards, no criteria selecting the routes. I have pictures where these above ground lines are literally laying on 4x4 pieces of wood, unstrapped, just out in the field. How is that safe if something happens? So we as a township, we need to look at how to address these type of safety issues as well as all the other ones. And, but figure out how we can regulate what seemingly is an unregulated, unreported, or even necessary reported by these operators. And these kind of events cause detrimental effects to us as citizens, farmers, landowners, pets, animals, schools, churches. We're all in danger when this happens. So the DEP right now has 164 ex-oil, gas, and coal employees on their payroll. So isn't that having the fox guarding the hen house? How are they going to help us when they're already getting funding and budgets and money from the people that they're supposed to protect us from? And in closing, I'd like to ask, as a citizen and a taxpayer, when these events happen, can we please have it posted to our township's page so that we know when these events are happening, so we have the choice to get out of town and away from the damage? Thank you.
Hold on, just give me a second to say. I'm trying to find this quickly. So we actually, during the Connor Samuel conditional use application for that pad and Bernard Schultz, tried to require an emergency plan. And I actually got heckled quite a bit by the attorney from Range for asking them to do that. And their response was that they don't have an obligation. And I'm trying to find it quickly. I know it's in here. But they actually challenged that, and I don't remember, if you bear with me, they actually challenged it, and I don't remember if it was upheld or stricken. But we do try to do that. We didn't know there was a casing failure at Augustine until, well, we didn't know about the casing failure at Augustine until we were told by residents. And when I asked Range, I emailed Range and said that, ask for an explanation. They first told me that Range detected a pressure increase in the annulus of production casing at the Augustine 6H well. Range immediately addressed the issue, identifying the source location of the pressure increase. Pressure increase, and subsequently setting plugs to isolate the source location, right? So they repeatedly said increase. When I asked a follow-up question, she responded by saying, this is regulated and overseen by the DEP. This information is publicly available on their website. So she kindly told me to go find it myself, which I did. And turns out that it wasn't actually what she put in writing to the township wasn't actually what happened. What actually happened was there was a pressure decrease, not a pressure increase. And when I dug a little bit further, turns out it's not the first time it's happened. But they misinformed us. So we're stuck between, like, we don't know, they have no obligation to tell us. They know they have no obligation to tell us. And so that's why, like, we would love to tell you, but this is why we tried to put a condition in to be able to inform you guys, and we can't. So
You can't. Is that a state? Is that Board A? Is that Superior?
it's a state thing. It's a state thing. So let me read to you really quickly. So it says, the department concluded an inspection of this well on 8/13/2024 after being notified by Range that I'm sorry, slow down. I'm trying to, like, not waste people's time, but sorry, I'll slow down. At the time of the inspection, being notified by range that the production casing failed during stimulation activities. At the time of the inspection, equipment was being mobilized off-site and stimulation activities were completed. According to range, anomalously low treatment pressures were observed while fracking stage 64 of the 6H on 8/9/2024 at 7:17 a.m. In her email to me, she says they notified them the next day. In their DEP report, it says it took them 3 days. So, I mean, we're stuck. We don't want to put misinformation out to you, but what the DEP is saying to us and what Range is saying to us are two literally completely different things.
All right, listen, it's time for us, we're going to close this hearing now, and we are immediately going to go to a special, we're going to go to a special meeting immediately following this, and it'll only be about a 2-minute special meeting. So at this time, we're declaring this hearing adjourned. And we're going to go right now to open up a special meeting that should only take a couple minutes. I'm going to call this special meeting to order. Let the record show that Supervisors Cassiola, Fisher, Schifani, Egizio, and Barney are in attendance. In addition, Solicitor Gretchen Moore and our Assistant Manager, Jack King. This special meeting was called originally to discuss the old maps that you saw for the past month, and the board had decided to go another way. We're looking at another type of ordinance. It will eliminate all maps and overlay districts and add well pad setbacks of 2,500 feet from protected structures and allow waivers from all property owners within that 2,500 foot setback. So now, instead of acting on any of the maps that we had proposed originally for this hearing, we just have 2 items to consider, and I'm asking the board for a motion to consider item number 206-2024. It's consider setting a hearing date and special meeting date to consider our newest proposal for the amendments so mentioned to our oil and gas ordinance for November 4th at 6 p.m. for a brief hearing, to be followed immediately by a special meeting, hopefully at 7 o'clock, to address the new ordinance that we've been talking about tonight. So is there a motion to set a hearing date?
So moved.
It's been moved for a hearing date of 6 p.m. on November 4th. And also, well, we can't have we can't have the special meeting before
Set
the
it for
public hearing.
6:45.
Well, that's 45 days, but we need to have that hearing after the business meeting then.
Why?
Well,
So that is your regular BOS meeting.
We're
so
right.
you could just vote at the BOS
okay,
meeting.
all right, so then we don't need a special meeting. Oh, good, okay. It's been moved, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item number 207-
Wait, you have people, yeah, not everybody voted, so are there any no's?
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I hear
No.
aye, I hear 3 no.
No.
No. I hear 2 no's. Let the record show that the motion carries on a 3-2 vote. For item number 207-2024, it's consider authorizing the solicitor and our township staff to prepare a draft ordinance and advertising in preparation for this hearing that we just set on November 6th. And a special, we don't need a special meeting.
November 4th.
Sorry, November 4th.
At 6 p.m.
Yeah, and we don't need this special meeting. So is there a motion to authorize the solicitor?
I'll make that, I'll second.
Okay, yes.
It's been moved and seconded.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We also have an opportunity right now to increase the distance for the nearest lot line on an approved plan. And then you can explain that.
Yeah, so I just need a little more detail from you also. Currently, we're saying 2,500 feet from protected structures and schools. So, we heard tonight, do you want a different distance from schools and hospitals than the 2,500 feet, or do you want it 2,500 feet for both protected structures and schools? Also, we have a provision in the existing ordinance about 1,000 feet from the nearest lot line of an approved plan. So that is if a plan goes in but hasn't been built yet, it would be 1,000 feet from the nearest lot line. Do you want to, increase that distance or keep that distance the same?
So my feeling is that it would be 2,500 feet from protected structures and 5,000 feet from schools and hospitals, because that's what the grand jury recommended. And And then as far as the, yes to the 250 from an approved lot line, even if it's not built, 250 feet.
Well, it's a
It's 1,000
1,000
right now.
in the
Oh,
current ordinance.
yes.
Keep that at
Yes.
1,000.
Yes.
Frank,
Okay. So
what's your
it's-
opinion on the direction first?
Are you okay with what I just said?
Yeah, I second it.
Okay, he's seconding what I'm saying.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Fisher?
Yes.
Cassiola, yes. Igizio?
Aye.
Yes. Barney?
No.
Shafani?
No.
The motion carries 3-2.
Okay.
So we will see you in a month. There being no further business, we're declaring this meeting adjourned.